Welcome everyone! You may know that Bobby Fischer played two especially famous games against Donald Byrne and his brother Robert Byrne. Both games are amazing. I've decided to show his win against Robert Byrne first. For this game, Fischer even won the tournament Brilliancy prize in the 63-64 US Championship. One thing I like about it is that the game starts quietly, there's seemingly not much going on. But after Byrne makes one completely normal looking move, Fischer pounced immediately and he wins a brilliant miniature. Let's see how he did that. Byrne had white and opened with d4, knight of 6, c4, g6. So Fischer may go for his favorite King's Indian or the Grünfeld. It continued g3, c6, already blunting the effect of the bishop when it lands on g2. Bishop g2 was played, and after d5 we have a Fianchetto Grünfeld position, which is a solid way of playing for both sides. However, it seemed Byrne especially wanted to play very solidly, real safety first chess. Let's see how that turned out. Byrne traded on d5 and developed his queen's knight. Bishop g7, e3, again very solid. Now the other knight will go to e2. A more ambitious way of playing would be knight to f3, and after castles, white can go knight to e5 and later follow up with f4. But Byrne went for this more tame way of playing with e3, castles, knight from g to e2, knight to c6, just standard development, white castled, and now both sides decided to deploy their bishops on the queen side. After bishop to a3, the bishop is eyeing up the e-pawn and the rook, so rook to e8. But more importantly, Fischer's decided something needed to happen in this position. He must have felt if Byrne isn't going to get active, then he might as well do that. Now breaking out with e7, e5 is the plan. And we now also see a downside of the knight being on e2, because sometimes f4 can be a good counter to prevent e7, e5. But you can see that the knight on e2 in this case would be clearly misplaced. In the game, white went queen to d2, and as expected, Fischer went for activity with e5. So he allows to be left with an isolated pawn on d5, but if you want winning chances, you have to compromise in some way. For that potential weakness, Fischer at least gets more active pieces. Byrne took. And here, Byrne played a very natural-looking rook from f2 d1, targeting black's d-pawn and getting out of the sights of the bishop on a6, but actually this turns out to be a critical mistake. He should have used his a-rook instead, and Fischer later explained that he would have played queen to c8, in typical Grünfeld fashion giving up a pawn, but getting excellent compensation in return after knight takes, bishop takes and rook to d8. Now he's threatening with a fork on f3 since the bishop is pinned, and if now f4, then rook takes bishop, and after queen takes, go bishop to b7, and based on black's bishop pair and the initiative, black's probably even a bit better. In the game, white chose the other rook, and now you'll see how Fischer punished that move. First, knight to d3. Now that knight is already amazing on its own, but there's more going on. Black threatens with knight to e4, attacking the queen and the f2 pawn. Also the bishop on g7 will then cut across the entire board and threaten the knight, which in turn is pinned to the rook. So safe to say, any hope of a quiet game for Byrne is now out the window. Probably white's best move is knight to f4, trying to trade off that dangerous knight. But knight to e4 will come anyway. After a trade on e4, white can get his rook to safety, but even here black has all the fun because he still has that amazing knight, and all of black's pieces are better than white's. Still, it's better than what happened in the game. In the game, queen to c2 was played, but this allowed a deadly assault on the white king, starting with knight takes f2, opening up the king. Now it's especially clear why the rook should have stayed on f1. Well, Byrne took, but then the other knight jumped in with check. Byrne put the king back on g1, Going to e1 certainly isn't better. Black can simply take on e3 now, but also good is queen to f6, threatening with a big check on f2. And if now let's say king to d2, then queen f2 anyway, planning queen takes e3 check. Although after king to c1, knight takes e3 is also completely winning, all kinds of things are hanging now. Going back, king to g1 was played, knight takes e3, but after queen to d2, it was here that Fischer played the star move of the game. Maybe you'd like to pause the video and find that knockout move. Many of us for sure would consider simply grabbing the exchange, but after rook takes, clearly the white king is in no danger whatsoever. All black did was trade his amazing knight for a bad rook, and now white isn't even worse anymore. Instead, knight takes g2 was played. Without that bishop, all the light squares around the king are weak, but it doesn't even end there. After king takes, the combination continued with d4, opening up all the light squares for the bishop on a6, and at the end is a lone white king. White took the pawn, the knight was under attack. Then bishop b7 check, but after king to f1 and queen to d7, only on move 21, Byrne actually resigned. There's a checkmate threat now. Let me just make a nothing move to show you. After queen h3 check, you can see the white king doesn't have a lot of squares left. After king to g1, here's the winning tactic. Bishop takes d4 check. That's deflecting the queen, but the queen is needed to cover the g2 square. The king has no moves though, so after queen takes, queen g2 is mate. Going back, let's say white goes queen to f2. Now the rook could recapture on d4 instead, but black still goes queen h3 check. And after king to g1, here's another trick for black, rook e1 check. Now of course, if queen takes, it's again mate on g2. But if rook takes, it's the rook that's been deflected, so now bishop takes d4 wins once again. The queen is pinned and under attack, so white either gets mated or loses tons of material. Well, so much for that safe game Byrne seemed to be going for, losing in only 21 moves. I suppose it can be easy to feel a bit too comfortable when you're going for such a solid setup. That rook from f to d1 move just seemed too casual, not really alert to the danger. Fischer, on the other hand, was very aware, and once you give him that one chance, the game may just end very soon. Well, let me know in the comments what you think of this game. If you enjoyed, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Tomorrow there will be another great game, so I'll be seeing you guys again soon, and take care.